Fodger and welcome to another Friday Reflections. I'm Rob Smith, also known as Judge Smudson. Archdruid is Arch Olaf Naturaha, the Archdruid and Chief Doctor of Art of the tribe. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about the laws of hospitality. Anyone who has visited a Celtic country will tell you of the warmth, generosity and welcome they find. Lords and rulers were expected to provide for their people, partly in the provision of feasts. Bres is deposed as High King because he left the Tuatha, quote, without grease on their knives and the smell of ale on their breath, unquote. The High King was expected to hold the Feis Cheiro, or the Feast of Tara, at least once during his reign, and possibly every 7 years. He was also required to hold the Feis Tailteann, or Feast of Tailtiu, annually. The kings of Leinster had to give the Feast of Carmen every 3 years. The kings of Ulster had to hold both the Ernach Macha, the Assembly of Macha, and the Feis Angusa, the Feast of Anuas Og. Manannán gives the Feast of Age to the Tuatha. Techdún, the House of Down, where everyone goes to after death, is called the Hall of the Ever-Boiling Vat, because it is a place of perpetual feast. Guests and hosts were expected to behave in certain ways. The host was expected to provide for their guests. They would be offered food and drink, comfortable surroundings, and a place to rest or sleep. One custom was that the host was offered to wash the feet of a traveller. This may seem a peculiar custom to us. In Christianity, washing feet was a sign of humility, but to the ancient Celts it was a sign of welcome. The guest expends time and energy in making the journey. Their feet may be sore from travelling. Washing them provided relief, but it also prevented dirt from contaminating the house. Birch branches were hung above the outer doors, so that anyone passing underneath would bring a blessing on the house as they entered. In return for the act of travelling, and for the blessing guests brought, the host reciprocates through providing the necessities of life to the guest. In the Golden Apples of Loch Erne, a prince, Con Eda, is tasked in retrieving 3 magical objects. To find them, he travels to a druid. The druid offers him food and drink, a comfortable chair next to the hearth, and washes the prince's feet. Fleabhrican, Feast of Brichu, is a myth from the Ulster cycle. Brichu is called a hospitaller, an owner of a hostel, a large house where people could stay. He invites the kings and nobles of Ulster to a feast at his new Brúin hostel. Brichu is an inveterate troublemaker who delights in causing mischief. His byname is Nemhenga, poisonous tongue. In some regards, it's a myth showing how not to behave. He incites the heroes of Ulster, Chuchlan, Conall Cianach, and Lurgar Buadach, to contest for the Curitmere, the champion's portion. He causes strife between the women of the court by getting them to argue about their sleeping arrangements. The result is that his own house is severely damaged. Chuchlan repairs it using his Riasrat, or battle fury, but it's no longer the beautiful, pristine hall it was before. The final decision on the Curitmere, the champion's portion, gives us an insight into why the laws of hospitality were so important. At the end of the myth, the 3 champions face a giant. The giant makes a bargain that each hero in turn should chop off his head one day, and the giant would return to exact his revenge in similar fashion the following. Lurgar and Conall both decapitate the giant, but fail to appear the following night. Only Chuchlan submits to his fate. The whole of Ulster is dismayed that they're about to lose one of their greatest heroes. Just as Chuchlan stretches out his neck on the block, the giant reveals he is actually Cúroi mac Deire. The 3 heroes had submitted to his judgment previously, but Lurgar and Conall had rejected his decision. Curoi declares that the champion's portion will be Cuchulain's forever, and Cuchulain's wife, Emma, should have precedent over all the ladies of Ulster because of Cuchulain's honour and bravery. Curoi appears in such disguise that no one can recognise him. He's not the only figure to do this. Manannán appears as the Bodach, the old man in the drab coat, and as a gillie servant in O'Donnell's Kern. Mia takes the form of Ailill Angaba, brother of Uchi Aram in the wing of Etain. He also creates 49 copies of Etain and her daughter, which are so identical no one can tell them apart. He creates 8 identical copies of Treblan in compensation to Frerk for trying to keep them apart. Turning, or perhaps a better translation, transforming, is a feature of Celtic mythology. Donn is turned into a stag, and 100 women of a she are turned into hinds. A Vortigern is the, quote, mistress of many forms, unquote. He becomes an eel, heifer, raven, and crow. Mia, Etain, Anuisoag, and Care can become swans. Fea and Bave were said to fly over battlefields as scald crows. Fand and Lieben are in the form of birds when Cuchulainn throws stones at them. The Síochána are, quote, clothed in a new immaculate body, unquote, in the other world. The Cailleach transforms from an old woman to a beautiful young woman when she gives sovereignty to Luggage and to Neil Noigelach. Warriors were transformed into hideous monsters by the Riastrat, the battle fury, amongst many examples. So even if you think you know the person next to you, he or she may actually be somebody completely different. The gods and the Urshi can take any form they wish. So not only do we have a duty of reciprocation when meeting others, we also have a duty of respect, as we cannot be certain who or what we are actually interacting with. I've spoken before about the 4 venomous arrows of disease, as they are called in the Carmina Gadelica. These are envy, jealousy, enmity, and malice. The ancient Celts considered that these 4 emotions were so powerful that they could cause disease, not only to the person they were aimed at, but to the person feeling them. There are numerous examples in myth where the consequences of these emotions are extremely bad. Fuanach's jealousy of Etain leads to her and her brother's destruction. The enmity of Mitach against Finn MacCool leads to his destruction. The envy of Monfine for her brother's crowd leads to the destruction of herself, her brother, and her parents. The death of Deirdre comes about after an act of malice by Conchobar mac Nessa. Wherever possible, we should avoid these emotions, especially when dealing with others. There are 4 tracts which are collectively known as the wisdom literature. They are the Testament of Moran, the Instructions of King Cormac, the Sayings of Cuchulainn, the Maxims of the Fiona. Although the tracts are aimed at rulers and warriors, they apply to each of us, as we are each rulers of our own lives. The Testament of Moran extols the practice of An Arin, which can be translated as justice or truth. Only when a ruler is just will he secure abundance of milk, corn, fruit, fish, meat, peace, tranquility, joy, ease, and comfort. He goes on to say that inhospitality yields to hospitality, niggardliness to generosity, meanness to liberality, impetuosity to composure, turbulence to submission, conflict to peace, and falsehood to truth. Cormac gives a list of attributes which he says leads the young to become old, i.e., if we follow these habits, we will live to a ripe old age. They include being blind to the concern of secrets, mild in the mead hall, gentle towards allies, physicians to the sick, weak to the feeble, strong to the powerful. Be not too close lest you are burdensome. Be not arrogant though you are wise, and do not deride the old though you are young. He also says that you should not defame in a man's absence. Later, he goes on to advise that you should not be too wise nor too foolish, too conceited nor too diffident, not too haughty nor too humble, and not too hard nor too feeble. Cuchulainn cautions his son that we should not seek fierce, ignobly rough strife, nor be violent, churlish, arrogant, timorous, touchy, hasty, bold, thought ill of by anyone, beseech in a tough way, or repudiate anyone unless they serve badly. He says that a person should be humble, mindful, vigilant, gracious in offering, giving, and lending. I know all that is a lot to take in a short broadcast, and I'll be returning to these tracks in later talks. We deal with all four in far greater detail in the fostering course. They're important because hospitality isn't just about guests and hosts, but how we treat each other and how we conduct ourselves. When we are not at home, we are guests, even if that is walking down the street, on public transport, in a work environment, on social media, or even in a talk like this. Over the last 20 years, social media has come to dominate our lives. There are advantages, such as being able to talk to you like this, but there are also disadvantages. It's easy to say things on social media that we wouldn't say in real life, because there appears to be no consequences. Speech is an action, and all actions have consequences. Speech, including posting on social media, has the power to hurt and to heal. In Gaul, Ogmius, the equivalent of Oma, was depicted with change from his mouth to his followers' ears. Drøyecht, Druidic ritual, is not only a matter of inchin, intent, but also the form and structure of the words used. It's an old phrase, but it is a truism that no person is completely self-sufficient. Whether it is the food we eat, the clothes we wear, travel, health, or safety, we rely on others. As Fili, we have a duty to establish judgment for all, which means that we should always seek to establish and maintain peace and justice for everyone. As Cuchulainn says, we should avoid contention lest we become odious. As Cormac says, we should be mild in mead hall, strong to the powerful and feeble to the weak. This does not mean we can't debate or disagree, but we should start from a position of mutual respect. I know there are some pagans who argue that there is no such thing as pagan morality or ethics, but I have to flatly disagree. The myths and the folklore are filled with examples. There are others who argue the moral aspect of Celtic mythology is an invention of Christian scribes, but again I have to disagree. Roman and Greek writers argue the Druids were intimately involved in matters of law and custom. Lugh, Manannán, and Mia are polygamous without condemnation, and Dorda's affair with Bowen and Ornia's ability to choose her own mate were not acceptable to Christian morality, but were accepted in the myths. The attitude to battle and war is certainly not Christian. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's reflections, and if you have any comments or queries, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Until next time, Joe Hechkin, have a great week. Bianach Brianna Let, may the blessings of the gods go with you. Agus Leash Gach Joe Gurek. Best regards, Rob.